Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Campus Care Ed Talks. I, Mehek Dhiman, your host for the day, would like to welcome you all. Ed Talks is a platform where educators and leaders come on board and express their viewpoints related to education and society. Our topic for the day is how to approach students who have experienced trauma and to express her viewpoints on the same. We have with us Ms. Shivani Gupta, ma'am, an educationist and school administrator. She started her career as a senior chemistry educator, then moved to being senior English educator for her passion for English language. She has an experience of 24 years of school and she is also a teacher trainer and leadership trainer. A very warm welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Mehak.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for being a part of Ed Talks. It's an honor to have you here.
My pleasure.
So, ma'am, how to reach students who have experienced trauma? The effects of childhood trauma, it often, manifests in the classroom in the form of disruptive student behavior. So, to start off with, ma'am, how do you teach student with trauma? How do you find out? How do you recognize that this student, how do you know that a student is traumatized? First of all, ma'am.
Yes, as you said about disruptive behavior, first of all, let me tell you, sometimes teachers fail to recognize that the student is behaving in a disruptive manner because of some trauma that the child is carrying. The student can be carrying trauma due to maybe bullying, or it could be also witnessing some act of violence that can induce a trauma in the child. Then it could be community violence, violence in the family, so that can induce trauma. Then, of course, physical abuse or early childhood abuse can also result in trauma or traumatic experience for the child, which can also show or manifest itself in classroom behavior. Trauma could also be loss of a loved one, loss of a loved one, maybe whom the child loved very much or dependent. The child depended emotionally upon that person, and that person is lost, so it can be very traumatic for the child. And of course, witnessing disaster, some threat to life, all of these are also causes of childhood trauma, but teachers are not able to identify that the child is carrying a trauma, because any of these traumas can result in two extreme kind of behaviors. Either the child gets very withdrawn and completely uncommunicative, and the teachers label the child as shy or introverted child. On the other hand, the child can start showing very disruptive behavior in the sense that the child draws negative attention. And when the child is drawing negative attention in the class, usually the child is termed as naughty, mischievous. In both the cases, what I have understood is that teacher must take the support of school counselor or somebody who understands child psychology through training. Right. Teacher, if she notices such behavior, her first step should not be to start prescribing treatments or changes or whatever herself. She should take a second opinion through the school counselor, or that kind of support, the health and wellness teacher or somebody who understands child psychology better in terms of having academically studied and understood it. And of course, then we come to, as your question was, how to teach students with trauma. See, when the child is either showing those withdrawal tendencies or when the child is displaying disruptive behavior, first of all, that needs to be settled before we come to teaching learning. Because when the child has faced the trauma, if I talk about the emotional state of the child is in a persistent state of anxiety, because the child is exercising coping mechanisms. So that anxiety results in the brain hyper focusing upon the danger, and is danger could be that traumatic experience, and is not able to focus on anything else. So teaching learning is maybe the third or the fourth step into that chain of actions that educators need to take. So first of all, she needs to understand, take support from the school counselor into understanding the child better through constant interaction, maybe referring the child to the counselor, and then understanding the situation after the counselor has assessed the child, maybe connected with the child. So that's one thing. And then, settling that anxiety, that brain focusing constantly on trauma. And such students show difficulty in engaging themselves into constructive tasks, engaging themselves with people, with their peers, with the teachers, right? And this is right from childhood, like the age at which the child faces trauma. It could be children of 4, 5, 6 years of age, or even students of seventh or eighth, wherein adolescence also sets in. So it is very difficult to identify whether the child is showing the kind of disruptive behavior because of adolescence setting in, or because the child has faced a trauma. So the outcomes of trauma are all of these behaviors or tendencies that the child displays, and the teacher needs to understand these first. Now, if I talk about the role of the teacher in the classroom, there are two kinds of teachers there for the child. One is a subject teacher who comes to the class, teaches a subject, and goes away. A closer mentor is the class teacher, right? So it usually sets upon the class teacher to do this kind of legwork and investigation to understand her children better, the class that is entrusted to her better,
Yes, ma'am.
right? Certain other behaviors after the trauma the children display are disproportionate reactions to setbacks or unexpected changes. This is noticed in younger children very much, that the changes in the routine of classroom or any new person entering into the classroom, this sets off disproportionate reaction. Like normal regular children would maybe acclimatize or adjust much more quickly as compared to a child who has faced trauma. Because once again, that bout of anxiety that probably must have been settling down is once again triggered. So these are also some of the symptoms or signs or outcomes of trauma. Then, of course, younger children once again show a lot of clinginess towards the teacher, class teacher, who they start looking up to as a safety figure or a mentor, because they are incapable of processing that trauma. So they are definitely looking forward to, uh, you know, an anchor, a support. So this clinginess is also noticed in young children, where they sometimes manifest a tendency to remain associated with the class teacher, to the extent that if the class teacher takes a break for 15, 20 minutes and goes out, children enter into bouts of crying, uncontrolled crying or whining. They wouldn't settle down, they wouldn't sit. So young children show this kind of behavior. Young children also show difficulty in transitioning from one activity to the other, because once again it triggers that anxiety and discomfort of not knowing. The comfort of predictability is lost once again when there's a change in the activity. Now, children having faced trauma also display signs of sickness much more than regular children. Stomach aches, general nausea. Nausea is much noticed in younger children. Complaints of nausea and pukish, or I'm unwell, stomach ache. All of these, if noticed frequently, abnormally frequently, are also signs that the child is not okay and has experienced some or the other traumatic experience, which could also be some harsh treatment from the parent. It could be to the level of that. Then, yes, aggression. This is usually noticed in adolescent children of classes 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. I've noticed children, trying to hide their traumatic experience, or their incapability to process that traumatic experience, under a garb of, or under a wheel of aggression, unduly aggressive towards their classmates, verbally irreverent towards their teachers,
Yes, ma'am.
which is not normal, beyond normal. All of these tendencies are also displayed by children with trauma. So, once again, the teacher might overread into things. If But I will also not want to dismiss her instincts completely if she's handling kids. So it would be much better if the teacher in the class, the class teacher, if she notices some of these signs and symptoms, she double checks with the counselor, and the counselor maybe does a more thorough check of the child. And in case trauma is noticed, the first step is for the class teacher to maybe take a meeting of all the other teachers who visit the classroom, right? And also to discuss child's situation with the authorities, because a further course of action needs to be determined. And it will also not be restricted to only school. Maybe the parents need to be taken into consideration. Maybe the parents are the one inducing the trauma by being too harsh or strict or disciplinarian at home or whatever. And sometimes the parents are processing their own grief, especially in cases of loss of grandmother and all, on which the child is much dependent, or emotionally dependent. So maybe if grandparent is lost, the parents are also processing their own grief, so they fail to notice such symptoms in their child. Under all of these circumstances, parents also have to be roped in. For that, um, the teacher needs to definitely discuss with the authorities on to further course of action, whether to speak with the parents, how to go ahead with it, So it lies on the class teacher to work out a complete strategy to handle a child who has faced trauma. Right. Then, furthermore, if we talk about plan of action, on the one side, the teacher, along with the authorities, needs to speak with parents, but on the other side, she needs to take a meeting with the other teachers coming to the class, and then, sensitizing the teachers towards the situation of the child, and ensuring that the teachers do not, even in their ignorance, make a remark that might come across as insensitive for the child. Because once again, step by step, that action has to be taken so that the child is supported by the school and the teachers. So no teacher needs to make an insensitive or derogatory remark, or pulling up the child, because such children also display a lack of interest in academics because they are processing their grief or trauma, and their work also remains incomplete a lot. So the first tendency of any educator is to say that the child herself is being lazy, or not completing her work. So under those circumstances, if if trauma has been identified, then every teacher coming to the class must be made to understand that it's not the child who is playing truant. The child is trying to manage her emotions. The child is managing her situation. So it lies up to us not to label the child as being, lazy, or not studying, or keeping her work incomplete, or being irregular. Uh, so that's the second step. And then, if we talk about trauma informed teaching strategies, so after all of doing all of this, we come to trauma informed teaching strategies. Right. Now, your question was, how should we mold our teaching strategies for such children? Please understand, no teacher is handling the child in isolation, except maybe the special educator. But trauma affected children do not need special educators. They're as normal as other children are. So, yes, maybe they are one among 40, 45 students. Right. So, under such circumstances, the teacher should be open to handling her class in entirety, together all the children, along with being sensitive towards the child who has faced trauma. So, one is giving opportunities to the child. Do not exclude the child, because once again, I will repeat, do not label the child. Every teacher has to be considerate enough not to label the child. So, first of all, abstain from labeling the child and include the child. Limit exclusionary practices, include the child as normally as you can. As you are involving other kids, you'll have to ensure that the child is involved. losing your patience at this time, or trying to come up with the child, on in a one-on-one verbal duel or something, will not yield any results. The child will go more and more aggressive and irreverent, and maybe you'll also start losing your temper, and then it becomes a spectacle in the class, which is something very unnecessary. So you are not going to compete with the child. That's the first thing expected of a teacher. Definitely, you are going to expect unexpected responses from such children who are showing disruptive behaviors, maybe because of some or the other psychological reasons that the child is carrying. You know, okay, and one more thing, how do we define trauma? When we are defining trauma, we usually kind of associate it with abuse of one or the other kind, which we can see. Any experience that's overwhelming for the child, you know, and negatively overwhelming, and it brings out a lasting impact on the child, emotional as well as mental as well as physical. Any kind of impact on the child is trauma. So, trauma necessarily does not mean that the child has faced a physical injury or something that you can put your finger upon.
Absolutely. I read some, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but I read somewhere trauma is not always that has, that has something happened to you. Sometimes it is, it is just some actions or some things that were never happened to you and never happened with you. That can also cause trauma, ma'am.
Right, witnessing an act of trauma, violence, witnessing maybe your classmates subjected to something, coming to know that my friend is undergoing something, can be traumatic for the child. So it could be a direct or indirect trauma, right? So that is why I am repeating myself that the teacher needs to take. Teachers shouldn't go prescriptive the moment she is noticing any abnormal behavior from the child. That okay, the child has faced trauma, so this, no. Take support from the counselor, discuss, consult, so that you are able to go to the bottom of the situation and come up with a plan that is a sure shot plan, and it's definitely not going to rebound, because that will be the worst thing for the child. It's like you've started treatment for something, and then midway through you realize, no, no, I was giving a wrong treatment, then take an about turn and go for some other treatment. So we don't have to. Then, yes, uh, I'll tell you about a personal case that recently I faced, wherein a teenage girl is very restless. She doesn't want to stay in the class. She constantly wants to move about out also. Then her interaction with the teachers is very irreverent, disrespectful. She's shabbily dressed also. And she is very aggressive in her interaction with any authority figure, be it the principal, vice principal, and of course the teachers. And we tried speaking with the parents, but nothing came out of it, because the parents, being the single child, the parents also refused to kind of listen. They are professionals, and they are very busy with their careers. Now, more often than not, this girl is a cause of disruption in the class, and it results in most teachers complaining about her. And once again, an argument is very much on the borders with her and the teachers in the class. So, as I'm trying to hammer that thoughtful, meaningful interactions with this child is only one solution to bring her to see that the teachers mean good for you, because she's disliking any authority figure. I have not been able to identify her trauma, because she's come to my notice a couple of days back only. But yes, I have witnessed her violent interactions or aggressive interactions with her teachers, and most teachers find themselves very angry with her.
Yes.
And so, thoughtful interactions, once again, counselors and teachers, they can sit and understand the child. Uh, but you've got to be completely objective about it. Do not try to color the situation with your own understanding and experience. So be objective. try consciously to build up a relationship with the child. See, you will not make any breakthrough in teaching the child unless and until that meaningful connection is made with the child. So make an effort as a class teacher specifically, that effort needs to be made. And yes, uh, the child needs to be made to feel understood, because many a times we also fail to understand the child because we are busy labeling the child as disruptive or aggressive or disrespectful. Right. So the child needs to be made to feel that she is understood. Then only further teaching can be done. Slowly and gradually, we can help her to fill up the gaps. But these are some of the important practices that every teacher must incorporate.
Absolutely, ma'am. I think thank you so much, Shivani ma'am, for being here today. It was lovely having you here and listening to your viewpoints and experiences upon trauma. And yes, some of the effects of trauma can really sound scary, but there is hope. And if somebody is really struggling following a traumatic experience, it is very important to seek help, I guess.
Yes, but the child doesn't know
Yeah.
who to reach out to.
Yes,
See,
ma'am.
the child, and it is for us educators to be able to identify those symptoms and signs fairly, to be able to clearly identify without reading too much into it, and then chalk out strategies to support the child to the best. And of course, involving the parents and the first support system of the child. Of course,
Absolutely.
if the threat is from parents, then it becomes very critical for the school also. It becomes much more difficult.
Absolutely, ma'am. It becomes really difficult. Thank you so much, ma'am, for have being here today and imparting your knowledge on how to reach out students dealing with who have experienced trauma, ma'am. Thank you so much, Shivani, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Mehak. I look forward to more sessions of this kind. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, ma'am. And for all the viewers watching us out, do not forget to subscribe to our channel for more stuff like this. Thank you, ma'am. Have a great day.
Good evening.